It is. It's runnier, but it's got a better flavor.
More
Guess what we're
herbaceous.
talking about.
Yeah, guess the item.
Guess the condiment. We're talking about ranch, you guys.
Yeah. The queen.
Amy's going back to our place of education, higher education.
Yeah.
To the central coast of Cali.
Oh,
I hate that I just said that. Cali. I hate that I just said that. California. With one of our other besties from uni, and Amy was like, what do we have to do on your behalf? And I was like, eat the French fries at Firestone with ranch. And then
we'll do that.
Dissecting the benefits of restaurant ranch, which are, it's just like an endless list of benefits.
So much better than store-bought. Sorry, Hidden Valley.
I mean, I will still fuck up some Hidden Valley. Let's be like super clear about that.
Yeah. But not on a salad.
Not
I don't put ranch
Absolutely
on
not.
salad.
It is a dip. It's a dip.
100%. Yep.
Done and dusted. It's a dip.
Yes.
Yeah, why? And also, like, the fact that I associate, like, I think part of it is, like, I associate it with being unhealthy. Which, like, okay, sure, it's got mayo in it, of course. Yeah. But, like, so do a lot of other things that I eat. And I'm like, this is healthy. Yeah. Like, Green Goddess usually has mayo. And I'm like, but it's got kale. Like, that doesn't green, matter.
So
exactly.
Healthy.
Oh, God. They're really tricking us. Have you been reading all of this stuff in the news about, like, all of these health associations saying, like, a drop of alcohol is going to end your life early?
Oh, God.
No. It's basically like, okay, well, I'm dramatizing it. But honestly, it's kind of dramatic. Like, it used to be, okay, so like Health Canada, for example, since I live here, their guidance used to be 2 beverages a day is like what they would say is the maximum. They recently updated it to 2 per week. And people were like, huh? And they were like, honestly, we're being liberal with it. You actually shouldn't drink at all. And it's like, okay, no shit, but like, what? And then they referred to, I think like the American Health Association, like a bunch of all these other, no, whatever the brain one is. I don't think it's the ABA, but it's like something like, it's like the American Heart Association, but for the brain, whatever that's called. It's like a Center for Brain Health and Neuroscience or something like that. But it's like that, it has nothing to do with your liver. It's that when you drink any alcohol at all, I sound like fucking Joe Rogan right now. So sorry, everyone. We'll get to the ghosts in a second. But we're going to become ghosts if we don't follow this guidance.
Exactly.
So premature ghosts. They say that it like kills so many brain cells. And once a brain cell is dead, it's just dead. And so it kills brain cells so that you will lose cognitive ability and then you'll die.
Wow.
I'm like,
that is dramatic.
Okay. And then the American Heart Association was like, oh yeah, and all that research we did about red wine and like the antioxidants, like actually having like really beneficial qualities, we were wrong. It's gonna kill you early. And it's like, motherfucker, man. Like, just let me drink a G&T in peace, for fuck's sake.
Right. We need this. We need
this.
Yeah.
Like, Amy doesn't even really drink, but she's like, we need it. So
I understand the need because I want it so bad myself.
Yeah, exactly. Noah was like, Noah is my boyfriend, by the way. Noah, also he may listen to this episode. So,
hey, Noah.
What's up, you little over? He was like, honestly, like the world is too shitty a place for no alcohol. Yes. I was like, that's pretty bleak, but yeah, you're not wrong.
It's true.
Also, carpe diem, bitches, you know? Like, let me just get a little buzz on. Like, let me live.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Can lose a couple days of my life.
Right?
For that. Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, so then it's like the question of like, okay, days. Sure. Weeks.
Is it? Yeah.
Okay. Months. And then when we're talking about like years potentially, like losing like a decade.
Oh.
But then again, if you think about, I mean, the thing Noah said, which I was like, yeah, that's so true. And I was talking to another friend today who's like, so, because I asked both of them, my friend at work and then Noah, and I asked my friend at work and I was like, what do you think about all this? Because he's like I don't want to say he's a heavy drinker. He's Argentinian. He just fucking binge drinks like, all the time. And that's normal for him. And he's like mid-30s, like super healthy, like, whatever, no problems so far.
Yeah.
And I asked him and he's like, I was like, what do you think about all this like new guidance? And he was like, I mean, what is it exactly? And so I like explained and he was like, is that new? And I was like, well, yeah, what do you mean? And he's like, alcohol's bad and will kill you. Like, this isn't new.
We knew that. Yeah.
That's actually a really good point. And then Noah said something similar, like along the same lines. He was like, I mean, the science is like good until it changes, He was like, before it was different. And then they could say in 2 weeks, like, oh, actually the antioxidants do like, get free radicals under control in your body or whatever. Like it could change. And like, I know talking to my parents when I was like paleo and whatever the crazy shit I used to do, when I would like insist on only using coconut oil. And my mom, like,
I remember that.
Yeah, this is like the worst thing for your body, like terrible for you from like a cholesterol standpoint, like so bad for you. And now you kids are like guzzling it. Like,
yeah, things do change.
It changes. So
and
I don't know.
Genetics play such a role too. Like
right.
The people who smoke their whole life and manage to live to 100.
Yeah.
And then someone who's otherwise healthy gets lung cancer and dies.
That's exactly it. That's what I've been saying, like, to this whole thing is it's like, of course, like, we want to think that we have so much control over everything, over longevity, over weight loss, over our climate. And like, that's by no means to say I'm like a climate denier.
Yeah.
Because I am not a climate change denier.
We all know.
No. We know the truth. We know what's in your heart. No, I am like adamant about doing what you can about that. But I think to an extent, like there's only, we just don't have that much control over things. Like, we just don't. And so it's like, yeah, you read those articles of someone from like Kentucky and it's like, so Mary Beth, how do you think you live to be 106? She's like, well, I got up every morning, I smoked a pack of Parliaments, drank 3 fingers of whiskey. And you're like, all right, fucking Mary Beth, like, sick. Like,
advice.
That's genetics for sure.
Yeah, or the people who are like, I just didn't hold any grudges. And it's like, that's not a valid reason.
That's not happening. So shut up. I now have a grudge against you, bitch. Stranger.
Exactly. So,
God damn.
Yeah. Started with ranch, and here we are.
Yeah, here we are. Anyway, a typical intro tangent. Hi, I'm Olivia.
And I'm Amy. And this is
Girls Gone Spooky. We're doing a really cool episode today, and I'm just going to immediately pass it over to Amy to explain.
Okay. And I was thinking that I should have verified this before we started recording. That your stories today are from the show, right?
Yes, they are. They are, yeah.
Okay, because otherwise this would not make sense. I'm very well prepared today. Okay.
It's all good, sis.
So, my part is a little short today because I'm setting the scene for Olivia. But this is inspired by the show on Netflix, 28 Days Haunted. And I haven't seen it, but I'm excited to now.
So good.
Although
so good.
There are very mixed reviews. When I was doing this research, some people were like,
really?
This is comedy gold. And other people were like,
okay,
this is so scary.
I can see how it's comedy gold. Now, I'll explain the funny parts when I get to them in my section, but it's like the things that are actually happening are really scary, but you know how these paranormal investigators are. They're weird, and like they take it like overly seriously, and it's just like, dude, chill out. Like, chill out.
Okay, I can't wait to hear, because I
Oh my
read
God,
about
yeah.
one that was like someone named Jeremy. Do you have a story
Yeah,
about
yeah,
him? Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. All right. We'll hold off. Okay. All right.
So funny,
So,
dude.
the show I will be watching, but the premise is that it's paranormal investigation teams, and they're locked down inside 3 allegedly haunted locations for 28 days. During the 28 days, they are totally immersed in the haunting with no contact with the outside world. So they say in the show's description also that the reason that they picked a 28-day duration or experiment, I guess, is because of Ed and Lorraine Warren, who
Classic.
we have an episode, I think, all about them, so
Yeah,
we
we
can
do.
refer back, but they're very famous paranormal investigators. So they had this theory, or they discovered that in their cases, it took 28 days to, quote, fully pierce the veil between the living and the dead. The husband and wife investigators, aka Ed and Lorraine, claimed that this barrier becomes virtually non existent at 28 days, allowing investigators to fully connect with what's lurking at a location. But with that, I was thinking, so if it takes 28 days, wouldn't they want to stay beyond 28 days? Or am I misinterpreting that?
I think that my understanding from the show is like, I don't want to like step on your toes if this is what you have prepared, but there are like waves to it. So it's not that they're like not making contact until then. It's that it takes a full 28 days to be able to communicate clearly and to get people to pass over, ideally, to the other side.
Okay.
That's like how they framed it, at least on the show. I don't know if that's like how Ed and Lorraine had viewed it, but
Okay.
so yeah, I guess technically, but I think it's that like 28 days is like the sweet spot for when you can like actually make impact on what's happening on the other side.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't see any mention of like trying to help things move on
Yeah.
within 28 days, but it was just saying, I mean, basically, and it makes perfect sense, that if you're in a place longer, you become acclimated to its rhythms, and if there is something there, the more time you spend with it, the more likely it is to present itself. So it just makes
Exactly.
sense that you need more
Yeah.
time in a place. So
When I read the show title, I was like, is this going to be like menstrual? 28 days haunted by my period. Like, okay.
It could be.
But no, it's ghosts. It's bloody, but in a different way.
Okay. I could see that being a show on TLC or something, like
Right? Totally.
after My 600-Pound Life and
Oh my God.
My Strange Addiction.
TLC really
Days
scrapes the
Haunted.
bottom. Yeah, scrapes the bottom of the barrel.
They do. Okay. But let's see. Where did I leave off? So, okay, validating the origin of this 28-day theory is a little bit tricky. It's not clear whether it's based on the Warrens' analysis of reports from other people who were living long-term in a haunted location, or whether Ed and Lorraine actually noticed this connection themselves after 28 days on certain cases. And unfortunately, they have passed away, both of them, so we can't ask. But they did leave behind a ton of notes on upwards of 10,000 cases that they investigated. I had no idea they did that many investigations.
I didn't either. Oh my God.
So, yeah. But
that's crazy.
Several of those cases are really famous now. We all know them. They're in books and movies like The Conjuring, was it Annabelle, or is that part of the same universe?
Yeah, I think it's the same universe, but I think it's a different haunting still.
Yeah, Amityville,
Amityville? Yeah.
etc. The list goes on. Okay, but we don't see the 28-day theory mentioned in any of their famous books or movies.
Mm-hmm.
And given the number of cases that they took on, it would have been impossible for them to actually uphold this theory in
Yeah.
every investigation. Somebody did the math and they said it would have added up to 800 years worth of investigation.
I was just going to
So,
say, I wonder, I can't do that mental math that quickly, but I was going to say, I
no,
wonder how long that would take. Yeah, too
yeah,
long.
way too long. That won't work. So,
Mm-mm.
but the fact that it's not mentioned in their most famous works that they're known for doesn't mean that this theory wasn't theirs. Um, in fact, it's thought that the 28-day theory was actually brought to light not by the Warrens themselves, but by
Oh,
Tony Spera, who was the Warrens' son in law.
yeah.
And he's also the current director of their foundation, which I think we also
Mm-hmm.
talked about, the New
Yeah,
England
we did.
Society for Psychic Research. Um, and because he was a member of the family and like the head honcho of their foundation,
Head
presumably,
honcho.
whatever the best term would be,
Yeah, no, I love it.
head
Head
honcho,
honcho.
he probably has access to notes and stuff that the public has not seen. So he may have been the one to introduce this. And specific to the Warrens, people also speculate that this theory might have started with the Amityville horror case
Mm.
because it was precisely 28 days that the Lutz family was able to stay in that house until whatever hellish thing was in there
Yeah.
drove them out. So that could be the start of it. Um, but the number 28 also pops up in places outside of just the Warren lore. For example,
Mm-hmm.
there are zombie movies with the number 28, 28
Mm-hmm.
days later, 28 weeks later. It pops up in angel numerology. It's connected to Saturn's return in astrology. The sun has a 28-year cycle in the Jewish tradition, celebrated in the Birkat Hachama blessing, probably butchering that. But that is a celebration of the sun. And 28 days is also the average length of the human menstrual cycle.
So actually, plot twist, it is about
Yes,
menstruation.
exactly. It all comes back to menstruation.
Uh,
So, yeah, that's the very simple overview of this theory that I think the show must be based on.
it
So,
it is, and it's interesting too because I think like I hadn't thought about it from that perspective too, like that the Lutz family, like 28 days to truly pierce the veil.
mhm.
On this side, we're not the only ones trying to pierce it. Like that if there's
Yeah.
something like demonic or something else on the other side in another like
Mhm.
dimension essentially that like they're trying to pierce it too. That's actually really
Yeah.
scary.
Yeah, that is scary.
And we
Yeah.
see some of that actually in the show a little bit.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Ooh.
it's good.
Okay. Cool.
Shall
Let's
we?
hear it. Yes.
Okay.
I can't wait to
So,
hear
there
about
are
Jeremy.
Jeremy. There are 3 locations that are featured. Madison Dry Goods, um, Captain Grant Inn, and the Lumber Baron Inn. And I'm going to go through them in order. The
Okay.
Madison Dry Goods one is the one that Jeremy is featured in, and I will get to his role in all of this in a moment.
Okay.
But to give you some background, so the way the show is laid out is they get no information about where they're going, so they're blindfolded on the way there. So this one is located in Germantown, North Carolina, but literally they're like led up to the house like with like
Mm.
heavy duty eye masks on, so they
Mhm.
have no chance to do pre-research or whatever about the location. Now that doesn't guarantee that they don't know the location before or aren't aware of it, but I think generally speaking, like it's not in their hometown, and I think like if they know something about it, it would probably be relatively minimal. And then they go in, they do a tour of the place, and then they're sleeping there, everything, like eating there for
Creepy.
28 days. Creepy.
Yeah.
So they definitely have, they must have some kind of like camera production crew in there with them. But a lot of it is actually, I don't know if there is. Now I'm like spacing now on, because it's been a few weeks since I watched it, if it's like just like mounted cameras, or if, because they also do some self-recording for sure.
Yeah.
So anyway, we'll get to that because it gets really dramatic, especially in this one. But for
Okay.
some context, so at the Madison Dry Goods, this is the location of the murder of the Lawson family, which is extremely like infamous in this area. The murder occurred on December 25th, Christmas 1929. And a sharecropper named Charles Davis, also known as Charlie Lawson, murdered his wife and 6 of his 7 children. Yeah.
Wow.
So there's just to set the scene. And then let's back up. So in 1911, Charles Lawson married Fanny Manring, with whom he had 8 children. The third, William, born in 1914, died of an illness, unfortunately, in 1920, or maybe fortunately, so he wasn't slain by his father. But,
Yikes.
In 1918, following the move of his younger brothers Marion and Elijah to the Germantown area in North Carolina, Lawton followed suit with his family. They worked as tenant tobacco farmers, saving enough money by 1927 to buy their own farm on Brook Cove Road. So fast forwarding to 1929. So days prior to Christmas, Lawson, who at this time is age 43, took Fanny, his wife, age 37, and their 7 children, Arthur, 19, Marie, 16, Carrie, 12, Maybelle, 7, James, 4, Raymond, 2, and Mary Lou, 4 months, into town to buy new clothes and to have a family portrait taken. This would have been an unusual occurrence for a working-class rural family of that era, which has led to speculations that Lawson's act was highly premeditated. Posthumously, it was speculated that he had impregnated his eldest daughter, Marie, 16. Yeah. Lawson, having purchased his own farm 2 years previous, however, together with the fact that an AP wire that went out on the day after the murders characterized Lawson as a well-to-do farmer, would make a pre-Christmas shopping spree appear reasonable. So there were some people thought, okay, that proves it's premeditated. Others thought actually kind of makes sense. They were sort of up and coming.
Yeah.
So on the afternoon of December 25th, Lawson first shot his daughters, Carrie and Maybelle, as they were setting out to their uncle and aunt's house. He waited for them by the tobacco barn until they were in range and shot them with a 12-gauge shotgun, then ensured they were dead by bludgeoning them.
No, so unnecessary.
He then placed the bodies in the tobacco barn. Afterwards, he returned to the house and shot Fanny, his wife, who was on the porch. And as soon as the gun was fired, Marie, who was inside, screamed while the 2 small boys, James and Raymond, attempted to find a hiding place. Lawson shot Marie and then found and killed the 2 boys. Lastly, he killed the baby, Mary Lou, and it is thought that she was bludgeoned to death. After the murders, he went into the nearby woods and several hours later shot himself. The only survivor was his eldest son, 19-year-old Arthur, whom he had sent on an errand just before committing the crime.
Oh,
really weird. The bodies of the family were found with their arms crossed and rocks under their heads. The gunshot signaling Lawson's own suicide was heard by many people who already had learned of the murders on the property and had gathered there. A police officer who was with Arthur, the oldest son, ran down to discover Lawson's body along with letters to his parents. As footprints encircled the tree, it was supposed that he had been pacing around the tree prior to taking his life. So before we get into like the haunting, which no shit, it's haunted. Like what the
Bad
fuck?
vibes.
Bad vibes. There's some speculation as to why this may have happened. Like what possessed literally, possibly, Charlie to do this. So there's evidence that months before the event, Lawson had actually sustained a head injury. And some friends and family had theorized that it had altered his mental state and was related to the massacre. However, there was an autopsy done at Johns Hopkins after his suicide, and they found no abnormalities in his brain. So could that be ruled out? I don't know. Then came the rumors about Marie's pregnancy and that it may have been the result of him sexually abusing her. So I'm going to stop there for a moment and start talking about where we pick up on the show.
Okay.
So this is the only pair of 2 investigators. The others each have 3. So that's like kind of an interesting dynamic because like there's a lot of like arguments between the ones that are 3 and 3. Just because it's like a lot of cooks in the kitchen and they all have differing ideas. And the way that they do it is it's typically one like maybe more like technical kind of investigator and then someone who's like a medium. And so, or a sensitive or someone in that category. So Jeremy and the woman go into this house. I'm spacing on her name, but they go into the house. They, things are kind of weird. They're starting to do, they're using the spirit box. They're using, they're trying to do what's that called? Why am I spacing on it? The electromagnetic EM.
Yeah, I can picture it with the action you're doing, but now I can't remember the name.
That is so. I keep wanting to say EMT, but it's not EMT.
I don't think so.
What the heck? F?
EMF? Electromagnetic frequency?
Field? Anyway, you guys know what we're talking about. The little thing that beeps. I'm losing it. So weird stuff's kind of happening. They're getting like some stuff like from the family. Like there's definitely like some of the kids are kind of coming through. Getting some weird vibes. There were lots of rumors about like obviously they come to the house because of the massacre, but also because of all the hauntings that have been reported. Like people getting a really bad vibe, like super heavy, like dark, evil kind of energy. And so they start getting a couple different like kinds of energies in the house. They're like definitely picking up on like the mother seemingly trying to like protect the kids. And then also like some of the kids saying like, we're afraid of him and things like that. So they're getting all these weird little pieces. And mind you, like they don't know the story. So at least allegedly, they don't know the story. So they're like, this is weird. What are they talking about? And then it's like, who are you afraid of? And it's like, Charlie.
Oh,
like they get names. Like it's wild. So then finally they go up into this like certain part of the house. I think it's like the attic maybe, or maybe it's the basement. And they start doing like, they're doing some like heavier work, like opening doors to this like darker energy. And Jeremy becomes possessed. He is extremely, and this is probably day like somewhere between 15 and 20. Like they're not close to the end, but they've been there for a while. And this is after a few bouts of like them opening up to this like dark energy and the medium being like, ow, like feeling like she's like physically being attacked, like her head, like she's being like crushed kind of. And Jeremy is seemingly extremely religious. And so he'll come over and like read scripture and stuff and like put his hand on her head. And he's so fucking dramatic. He's this like big Southern man. And anyway, so, and she's like, fuck this. Like I've got kids at home. Like I can't have this thing. I can't have something following me back to my house with my family. Like we have to like temper this a little, but he's really insistent on pushing forward and is like reading scripture and all this stuff. So he gets possessed and it becomes blatantly obvious. Like before he was like super patient and kind and like very caring, like protective and all these things. And suddenly he's just like a dick. He's like sleeping like 22 hours a day, like snapping at her, like being really mean and kind of like threatening almost. And she's starting to get scared. And then they do some some sort of thing to kind of snap him out of it. And basically he has to go to the hospital because he starts having like heart palpitations. He's basically like showing early signs of a heart attack. And like to look at the guy, you're like, oh, so you should go to the hospital. So he gets there and it's like, no, everything looks normal. Like as soon as he's away from the house, he's fine. It's so weird. So he comes back and he's still like, he's a little better. And then he kind of gets worse again once they're in the house for a few more days. And then she's finally like, enough. Like, what if Charlie did this to his family because he was possessed? Like, not just because like everything, the sexual assault, incest kind of stuff, and then the murders. Like, what if he was possessed to do these evil things? And they also had gotten from the spirits like some inklings around like the baby, and they're like, oh, like was there a baby? And then it was like an unborn child kind of thing. So they started to get the sense, and then they found a photo of that photo they took, which we'll post on our Instagram because it's like very eerie because he's like standing there next to the daughter, knowing that she's pregnant with his child, which is gross.
Disturbing.
So disturbing. So she's like, listen, like, I'm kind of afraid of you. And like, you need to commit to, like, this isn't you. Like, you need to commit to like getting this off of you, like getting it out of you. So he gets kind of emotional and finally is like, okay, yeah, you're right. So they go through a whole thing and kind of get it separated from him. But I mean, it's like dramatic. And the shit that happens, like, unless this is like a very well orchestrated, like entertainment style show, I've never seen Paranormal Activity on video in any other paranormal show. Like, things like them leaving the room and like cabinets opening, like and doors opening and closing, like really scary shit. And whenever he would read scripture, it made something really mad in there. Like, it's giving me chills just thinking about it. But it was like, oh, it was creepy. So they make it to the end and they essentially like do the research on the house and they're like, holy shit, like this matches exactly what we experienced. So
wow.
That,
interesting.
That is Madison Dry Goods in North Carolina.
Very interesting.
And it's open, by the way. Like, you can go there and do tours, and I think it's like actually a dry goods store. Like, I think you can go in and like shop there as well.
Interesting.
So
the thing that I read about Jeremy, which is not funny now that I know the story, but people on Reddit were talking about how after his heart episode, the next scene was him like eating a bucket of mozzarella sticks or something.
Something like that. Yeah, it was like he's like back from the hospital eating like chicken wings. And you're like, dude, come on.
It's not as funny anymore.
No. But also when he's at the hospital, she's left at the house alone. And she's scared shitless. They also had to move. So when they first got into the place, she was like, I'm sensing like a really bad energy in this room. And she was like seeing things at night and was like, I can't sleep up here. And like, they basically have to sleep like early in the morning through a lot of the day because a lot of the activity is happening at night. So their like sleeping schedules are really off. So they end up moving their mattresses down into like the main room because she actually is considering leaving like really early in, like 8 days in or something. So they make it through to the end. They're like right about everything, which is so wild. And it's just like a gruesome thing. But he basically at the very end, once the possession seems to be done, he actually attempts to like exorcise the demon from the home, and it seems to work. Like, there's definitely like a final battle kind of scene where it's like throwing things and breaking glass and slamming doors. Like, it's fucking crazy, man. And he's like sweating bullets reading from the Bible. Like, it's like, whoo, it is,
intense.
creepy and really intense. Yeah. So part of me was kind of like, I don't know that Charlie deserves to blame all of that wickedness on some entity.
Yeah.
But
You
who
never
knows?
know.
You never know. So really creepy. So
Wow.
we'll lighten it up for this next one.
Okay.
This next one is Captain Grant's Inn, and it is located in Preston, Connecticut. Built in 1754 by Captain William Grant. He had the home built for his wife and their children, and 3 generations of Grants lived in the home before it left the family. The house is also located near the first cemetery in the area, which actually is an important detail to come. It's now a rustic bed and breakfast that is very well known to be haunted. So Captain William Grant, his wife's name was Mercy. He actually died at sea. And Mercy lived there in the home until well into her 80s, again, followed by 3 more generations of their family. According to the inn's website, during the Revolutionary War, soldiers of the Continental Army were garrisoned there. During the Civil War, escaped enslaved peoples were sheltered there. The house underwent a significant renovation in the mid-1990s and now features numerous actually named rooms. So we'll talk about one room in particular, the Adelaide room especially. But the renovations included 6 working fireplaces and a 3-story porch. And again, Pocketannock's first cemetery is also located behind the inn. So back to the Adelaide room. So this is the room where, of the 3, the one woman there is the medium. And this is probably the group with, I was going to say this is the group with the most like tension and like infighting, but actually both this one and the next one, because the next one's pretty grisly too. They're both pretty gnarly. But she is originally placed in the Adelaide room to sleep. And again, doesn't know anything about this place. So like goes in there, is having horrible dreams, like seeing things in the room, like really, really terrified, like seeing things like people in the room. And when she goes in this certain area of the room, like feeling like there's like death that has occurred in this area of the home. So she's kind of creeped out. It's actually the next one though that has the most infighting, because it really is quite grisly and it's a similar sort of story. But basically, like, what it boils down to on this one is it seems to actually be Mercy who's haunting the house. So in this Adelaide room is like a hot spot. Guests have claimed to be awakened in the middle of the night to see a woman dressed in colonial era garb holding hands with 2 children. There's a lot of appearances of the children around the house. There are claims of the TV turning itself on and off, as well as the shower curtain being knocked down without provocation, which made me think of our old apartment. Visitors have reported hearing random knocking, seeing unusual shapes. EVP, that is, it just came up on my notes, and I'm like, duh. One guest described the sensation of having her face caressed by invisible hands, and another told of the shade of a young child, like a shadow of a young child passing through them.
Oh. Too much.
There are also, lots of recorded EVPs here, many including the voice of a young girl. Phantom footsteps have been heard in the attic. And then the owners of the inn, though, have described their ghosts as very protective spirits and really have only experienced like positive, eerie, but like positive things. That is actually like pretty in line with the experience of the investigators in the show. They're initially really creeped out because it's like, oh, there's a woman standing by my bed. That's terrifying, like with children. But there's nothing really like dark about it. So some of the EVPs, though, I wanted to say this one. There were one one investigative team, which is not this one from the show, but a different one, have on recording a small voice whispering, "Come back in here," as they were leaving a room, which I was like, creepy. But then once you see kind of the angle of the whole thing, it's actually kind of sweet. Because the kids, as far as I understand, didn't die there. So it's almost more like their residual energy, or like when they did die, they came back to their mother in that form.
Yeah.
But basically, like, what the investigators on the show experience is like Mercy trying to communicate something about like missing someone and someone being at sea, and like he died at sea, and then ends up like pointing to them like through the medium, like pointing out to the cemetery. And they go out to the cemetery, and he and she are both buried there. At least he has a grave marker. I don't know if his body's there, but
wow.
so it's interesting. And then they're like, oh, okay, like this is the namesake of the inn. And then they leave and they're like, oh shit, like, yeah, that makes total sense. So yeah, another one that seems like pretty well confirmed. And the last one is the Lumber Baron Inn in Denver, Colorado.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exciting.
Very exciting. So this was once the home of a lumber baron, of course, named John Muat in the late 1800s. It's now, again, a bed and breakfast, and there's some fucked up shit here. So it's said to host lingering spirits who refuse to move on, which is like a very kind way to say it, because this has a dark motherfucking history. So some history. The mansion was built in 1890 by John Muat, I'm not sure if I'm saying his last name right, a Scottish immigrant who had amassed a fortune in lumber. Between 1889 and 92, his lumber company built over 200 buildings in Denver, helping to transfer the town from a mining camp to the glittering city that it would become. Built along Cherry Creek, been there, overlooking the rowdy mining camp below. Murat built the best building for himself, his wife, and 5 children. So beautiful home, has all this like intricate, like, of course, features a ton of different types of wood: oak, cherry, sycamore, maple, tons of detail. All the fireplace mantles have these like really distinct, unique carvings and fine details and blah, blah. Basically, it's freaking beautiful.
Yeah.
The mansion, of course, has passed through a number of hands through decades since John Muat and his family lived there. Nothing scary happened when they were there, doesn't seem. This is like, that's just the history of the building. So finally, after being passed down, it basically was super run down. And then around this time, something really horrible happened. 2 young women were murdered. So in 1970, a 17-year-old runaway girl who was living in the building was brutally raped and strangled to death. And shortly afterward, her 18-year-old friend had the unfortunate timing of stumbling upon the murder. The killer then shot the second girl, and the murder, which remains unsolved, is allegedly blamed for the paranormal activity that takes place in the building today. So, cut to the show. So they get into this place. Again, the medium is the woman, and she's immediately like bad vibes, like really bad vibes, like violence. Like she can sense like points in the home where she could sense there was death and all of this stuff. They go back and forth, and she's like, you are asking me to open myself up to evil, and I'm just simply not willing to do that. And they're like in this like holding pattern where it's like, well, we're not going to get anywhere if we can't communicate with whatever's on the other side. So they're all getting really frustrated with each other. Tensions are rising, and she's finally like, you could be sensitive too. Like, why don't you try? Like, why is it like I'm offered up as sacrifice? Like, this is shitty. You guys try too. So she's like scrying and doing all this stuff to like call this like entity, and like it starts okay, and she's seeing these women, and then she's like seeing these horrific murders, and then like the presence of whatever the murderer like is kind of like entering into the space, and she's like, fuck this, no. So they kind of go back and forth a bunch. Essentially, they end up discovering this like secret tunnel in the basement.
What?
That's like really like rudimentary looking, but like kind of like rocks or stones like stacked on top of each other to create the walls. And then they look up and they realize that there's like a manhole cover. And so they lift it off and it goes straight to the street. And so they're like, this is so crazy. This is so crazy. So then they go back into the main part of the house and they're, you know, this is over the course of days, of course. So they find that pretty early on. They're communicating with the spirits and they're like, the spirits are basically like, it's down there. What you're looking for is down there. And so they're like, okay, great. Back into the creepy pit. Like, great. So they start figuring out like, okay, like there must have been murders that occurred here. And then some of the spirits are saying like, there are so many. There were so many. So they're starting to get the sense of like, and the police at the time, by the way, said that these two murders were not, or missing girls at that time were not at all connected, which doesn't make any sense. I think it was to keep the public from freaking out, but it seemed pretty obvious they were connected. So they're like being lured back into this like creepy pit by the spirits and they're like, oh, fucking great. They find an article like old, like looks like it could be from the 70s, folded up and jammed in between the stones of the wall, like deep, deep, deep in there.
Yeah.
And they pull it out and it's an article of like, I think it's both articles of like both of those two missing girls, or at least one of them. And the psychic kind of gets this like wave of like, he hid in here. Like he hid in here when after he killed them. And I think he killed way more. And like, so then she's like, can you get out of that manhole? Like, can you pull yourself up and out? And this one of these like scrawny investigators is like, let me try. So he like opens it up, pulls himself out, no fucking problem, right onto the street. Like super discreet getaway. He could have hid in there, holed up in there for months. Like if he had food and stuff, I mean, he could have stayed in there for a long time, and it remains unsolved. So they go back into the house and they get the sense that like he murdered a lot of people. Like this was likely a serial killer. And those were the two that definitely happened in the home, but it's possible there were others as well.
Okay. I was just going to ask if they thought all of it happened in the house or if he was just a murderer.
That was unclear. She has this vision when she's scrying at one point where it's called mirror scrying. And or no, actually this time I think she was like, I don't know if it's called like flame or like fire scrying, but it's like you're staring into a candle and you let yourself kind of like your gaze kind of soften. So you're not really looking at the candle, you're looking sort of through it.
Yeah.
And then it allows the spirits to like come, like bring visions to you. And she basically starts to see like a circle of women just like going around and around, like many women.
Yeah.
And so she is getting the message from the two who definitely were killed there that like there were others, like we were not the only ones. And her interpretation at least was that from that interaction, as well as a few others, like them communicating through EVPs and stuff, that they just wanted their stories told. Like they didn't want to be forgotten, and they wanted people to know that like this person took their life. Like this wasn't just something that happened and they disappear forever. Like there was something really horrible that happened to them, and they deserve for the world to know that.
Yeah.
So it was. That one was scary. Like
on a lot of different levels, like
on a lot of levels,
scary and spiritual
haunting, scary. Yeah, the show is great. Like there are moments that are super scary, but there are enough moments that are like, okay, Jeremy, that you're like, that's fine. They also don't go through them one by one. They circle, like they rotate through all three throughout. And the one in the middle is kind of sweet. It's still a haunting, but it's exactly. It kind of lightens things up a little bit. And she's just like missing her husband, it seems.
Right. Yeah.
So I think in that one, they may actually help her pass on at the end, if I'm remembering correctly. the whole point of the show was to prove that the 28-day theory is like
The
legit,
thing.
valid.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It seems that they did that. I don't know. I mean, I think like they definitely had like their biggest breakthrough discoveries on that last day,
Mm-hmm.
but you know, when you're working against a timeline, that can influence you too.
Right.
So
Yeah, that's
who
true.
knows? But it's an interesting concept. And I think, like, going back to what you said about the Amityville murders, like, that's something else could be trying to pierce it from that side too, is
Mm-hmm.
like a very spooky concept.
Yes, very. Yeah, I haven't thought about it that way because I always think about it from our perspective.
Yeah.
But yeah, they might be trying to come through too.
Yeah.
That's
Which
scary.
I don't like. I'd like them to
No.
stay where they are. Thanks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. But
Um,
sorry, I was just Googling something because
yeah.
my first
Oh, yes.
thought when you said serial killer was that I know Ted Bundy killed women in Colorado, but he didn't come till 1975. So,
Oh. I
yeah.
mean, like he wasn't in Colorado at all?
Yeah, not yet.
Oh, okay. Because I was going to say, are we sure?
I think. Let's see.
I feel like they would have said that. I feel like they would have
Mhm.
mentioned Bundy if they thought that were a possibility, but
Yeah.
that's a fucking creepy thought.
I think
Have we
he
talked much about Bundy? I don't think we
um
have.
I think
That one in the
yeah, a little bit.
forest.
It was like a somebody's personal story of like
Yeah.
potentially crossing paths with him,
Yeah.
I think. Um
That one was scary.
yeah, but we haven't talked too much about him otherwise. And I think when he was in Colorado, he was actually up in the mountains, so I don't know if he spent any
Mm.
time in Denver.
Oh,
Um
interesting. Okay.
but yeah. We did. Oh,
What an
and
evil, evil man.
in the celebrity episode,
Mm,
Lily Collins, who played, I guess, his girlfriend
that's right.
in a show or movie, I can't remember.
Yeah.
She thought she was
Yeah,
being
in the show.
haunted by his
Yeah.
victims.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
That was the one with Zac Efron. That one was really good. I think it was like a limited series, kind of like the
mm,
Dahmer one. It was like
hmm
10 episodes or whatever, but
yeah,
it was very well done and it was very spooky because
yeah,
she played the girlfriend. I'm spacing on her name, but he seems normal with her.
yeah,
Like,
right.
I mean,
And what's
it's
the
just mind
difference
boggling.
between her and the women that
Yeah.
he could treat so horribly?
Yeah.
And didn't he have a
I know.
daughter? I think he had a child, I thought. Or
I
maybe
think
I'm
she had a child.
okay. Ugh.
Um,
I'm having to
is
Google
that
that right
right?
now. Ted Bundy
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah, now I can't remember.
Yeah, Rose Bundy. Ted Bundy's first and
Uh,
only biological child.
oh, it must have been with her then.
Yeah. Oh, Ted
That
Bundy's
is
daughter secretly conceived on death row.
what?
I think we need to look into this. It's not really a
Oh
haunting, but
shit. No, but that's
um
fascinating. We will report back.
yes. Yeah, conceived on death
Secretly
row.
conceived. I mean, I guess what? So another death row inmate or a guard? Okay, we're
Uh,
definitely gonna have to see who the mother is.
yeah. Did they allow a conjugal visit?
Maybe? Do you
But
get that from death row?
he,
For a
yeah.
serial rapist and
Wh-
murderer?
Why
That seems
would he get that?
unlikely.
Yeah.
Yeah, of
Yikes.
all people.
Ew, but have you seen or read articles about the women who are like obsessed with serial killers?
Oh, yeah.
It's
They're horrifying.
fascinating though. Like there
Yeah.
was in that the one about the Night Stalker,
Yep.
that was also on Netflix. They did a whole part of an episode about that because he was getting after he was captured, he was
Yeah.
getting like nude photos and people like proposing to him and confessing their love for him and showing up at in his court like in at his trial being like, marry me and stuff like that.
Oh my
And
God.
this guy was vile, first of all, and also
Yeah.
one of the like defining characteristics of him was the people that survived.
Yeah.
They described his smell because he
Yeah.
had rotting teeth and just
Yeah.
was like a
So
filthy, disgusting
disgusting.
person. And these women
Disgusting,
are
disgusting.
fawning over him.
It's
It's
so gross.
very odd. What a
I mean,
phenomenon.
there's something dramatically wrong with them in
Mm-hmm.
a similar way, probably, to what's wrong with these men. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, so I just looked it up really quick. The mother of Rose Bundy is Carol Ann Boone, who is actually his wife.
Oh.
But he was a father figure to Elizabeth, his ex-girlfriend, her child Molly from a previous marriage. So there was a child around in that time with her. So we were right about that. But yeah, I'm seeing that about like secretly conceived in
On death row.
like
Yeah.
how?
I'm fascinated.
So weird. Yeah, she got pregnant while visiting him while he was on death row. How that happened, people still aren't sure. He technically wasn't allowed conjugal visits, so once Boone became pregnant, rumors began to surface about just how that happened. But Boone said it's nobody's business how she conceived a child with Bundy. Then that makes me think maybe she cheated on him. The Sun, I guess, speculated about her conception, guessing that Boone may have passed an empty condom to Bundy via a kiss, which he then filled and returned in the same manner.
What?
So they're,
Okay.
yeah.
Yikes.
I
So,
wonder where she is now, that poor girl.
yeah, that's gotta be horrible to know what your father did.
And your mother, for that
Yeah,
matter.
true. Yeah, I'm seeing this now too that, let's see, points out conditions of Bundy's confinement didn't require such extravagant imaginative measures like passing the condom. Bribing of guards was not only possible but common and allowed the couple to have sex in numerous corners of the facility in various rooms, which people reportedly even walked into a few times.
Oh, God.
So I don't think they were being particularly subtle.
That's so gross.
Okay, well, this
Well, now we know more
episode.
about Ted Bundy.
Yeah, and his sex
And
life. Ugh,
yeah, exactly.
yikes.
Gross. Um, well, let's try not to become premature ghosts and drink in moderation. Or don't. You know what? Who are we to tell you what to do?
Drink and
Um,
enjoy ranch in moderation.
oh, fuck me up. I like now I want a snack. Like now that we've talked about ranch so much, I'm like, I could go for a snack, but it's 9:45 and I need to get my ass in bed.
Yeah.
You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Girls Gone Spooky. And you can email us your spooky stories at girlsgonesspooky@gmail.com. And the one thing we will tell you to do, we'll fucking tell you to stay spooky.
Stay spooky. Yep.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Bye.